So where does this leave Canada as the August 1st deadline quickly approaches and a 35% tariff looms? Our party insiders are here. Greg McEachran is a former Liberal ministerial advisor. Fred Delory is a former Conservative campaign manager, and Melanie Richer is a former communications director for the NDP. Hi guys, nice to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having us.
Greg, I'll start with you. I don't even know how to set this up, just because I feel like we've been talking a lot about this, but it does seem like a bit of an escalation, perhaps, from the president today, at least on the rhetorical side of things, saying that there really isn't much of a negotiation going on. How do you read his comments?
Well, I'm glad you asked me about Jeffrey Epstein, because really what I want to, I mean, everything else, if we're looking at this, and we should be, this is our job, is to look at what the impact on Canada is. But if you look at things in Washington and the bigger picture, the president is in a lot of trouble, probably the most trouble he's been in thus far. His base is angry with him. Gallup polling is not going great for him. Other polls not so great. And the impact of his decisions around trade, we're starting to see them. We mentioned last week, month over month, the car travel to the United States from Canadians. I saw a couple articles this week about the impact of the good provinces that have done bans on American alcohol. Shame about Saskatchewan and Alberta. But that is sending a message to them as well. So there's a lot of other things. And then if you watch the broader clip today when he was asked the question, it wasn't as centered on Canada as some of the, if you just take it in that little slip. So he's got a lot of issues. The problem with, if he pursues the tariffs, the estimates right now is, on average, this is going to cost Americans $2,400 extra a year. The impact means that coffee for Americans will go up, shoes, appliances, and then what he's talking about, copper goes into everything. Yeah. So I know that it is our, like as Canadians, we tense up, but there are a lot of other problems as well. And the other thing I just say to the folks that are watching is there's a really interesting / weird article in the New Yorker on the Trade Secretary Lutnick, and he, I guess at 1 o'clock in the morning when he's in bed, Trump calls him and they discuss things. And one of the things he mentioned was, we talk about Canadian steel. Now, I can't wait for Saturday Night Live to come back on. I could just see, like someone playing Lutnick with like, cold cream in their face and a princess phone. But this is really, really bizarre. So, I think that the premiers did good work this week. President Obed from ITK was on before. He's having conversations. We need to keep doing what we're doing. And, if you look at what the Treasury Secretary said last Sunday, or what he said last Monday, he was hinting at delays. Yeah. So it's really tough. It's like trying to put a thumbtack in Mercury.
Fred, what's the next play for the government?
Play for this government? Well, when you're dealing with a man built from chaos, what's the next play? I don't know. The issue is, this is typical Trump. This is just, he postures, he publicly negotiates, he throws things out. The fact that Canada's, it almost feels like a bit of pride as a Canadian that we don't have a deal with this man, because there is no real dealing with this guy right now. Obviously, we have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. We don't know how these negotiations are going and how they're going to end up. We have supposedly a week to this deadline, but there's no such thing as a deadline with Trump. There's nothing standard. There's nothing normal. There's nothing normal about this process. I think at the end of the day, though, Canada and the U.S., we're each other's most important trading partners. And there's, as Greg mentioned, there's so much pressure in the U.S. as well to make sure that there's some kind of deal alleviated here. But there's also a lot of distractions the Trump guys are trying to throw out right now. They're dealing with a lot of domestic issues themselves that are not good. That I'm sure that's what's keeping him up at night, not a trade deal that he is, a trade crisis that he has created with his closest trading partner. So, what's the next play here? I don't think anyone has any idea.
Mel?
I would say, I agree with what both of you have said. I think the only difference for what the next play is I think the government needs to not forget that they can't stop communicating with people. The fact that I know this happens every Friday, it feels like he says something and we're asked to respond. The fact that the government's not, and I know you're not going to want to respond right away, and I know you're not going to want to throw shots or anything right away, but the fact that the president said today that they're not prioritizing this agreement with Canada, and that's likely true or not true. He says, whatever is in his head whenever he wants to, but making sure that it's the summer. I know people are maybe on vacation. We're not paying attention to it maybe as much as we usually are, but to continue to communicate with Canadians what the plan is, what they're doing, and what they're doing to reduce barriers in Canada, what they're doing to build relationships with other countries, that can't stop because...
That's the next play. You're right.
Yeah.
That's what the focus should be.
Yeah, because... No, that's okay.
That's exactly what it is. It's about getting our products to market, into a global market that's not the U.S. It's long-term not good for the U.S. that your closest trading partner has been woken up that we need to diversify our economy greatly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let's move to our next topic. Meanwhile, in Alberta, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre will soon get the chance to earn a new seat in the House of Commons, and this time he'll be up against more opponents than ever. There are currently 193 names on the ballot in the Alberta riding of Battle River-Crowfoot, a number that keeps growing every day. This is largely due to protesters running to call for electoral reform. But Poilievre is calling for the government to introduce legislation to stop these long ballot protests, saying this is not democracy in action. It is a deliberate attempt to manipulate the rules, confuse voters, and undermine confidence in our elections. In response, the Office of the Government House Leader said that our government shares the concerns about the longest ballot initiative, and we are currently examining this issue. Fred, what do you make of this whole thing? I mean, we're almost at 200 people on this ballot.
It's a mess. I remember we did a live election night, by-election coverage over a year ago.
St. Paul's.
We would have been up to 4 a.m. counting ballots.
I was here for that.
Where a Conservative had a huge upset that night, and it would have been fun to be on TV to see that as a Tory partisan. At the end of the day, their goal is electoral reform. Their message is not coming out, though. All that's coming out is chaos. It's not coming out. They want proportional representation. And a part of the issue with all of this and what we're dealing with, there's 2 constitutional issues we have here. One, the Supreme Court has ruled that you have to have an easy way to run for office, and that's why it's so easy for these people to get on. Now, there's tinkering the government could do. For one, most of these candidates have one official agent, so there's tinkering and things that you can change. But the other side of it is, what this group wants is proportional representation. That would have to open up the Constitution. So there's 2 things here that are like very, very difficult to deal with. I think the easiest is for the government to step in, and hopefully all parties will agree to do this in the fall and put in a bill that just makes it's still easy to run, but maybe you have to have one official agent per candidate, not one official agent for 100 plus. I think right there that would make it, because being an official agent, and we know party finances, it's a lot of work. No one just signs up to do that. So I think that would help limit this. At the end of the day, no contest yet has been affected by this. Our coverage has been affected, and that's annoying, but no seat has been won or lost because of this process. However, that's today, and it won't be in Battle River either, but what about down the road in a year's time or 6 months if there is a contest and there's names that are similar and someone wins by just a handful of votes, and it's because of this type of protest that just really does screw up?
The online backlash, though, is vicious. I don't know if you've seen any of the chatter about this. They're saying that they're purposely trying to target Pierre Poilievre, undermine his chances, a repeat of Carleton. A lot of people are reading into this huge candidate list as a deliberate attempt to undermine Poilievre's election.
I don't think there's... I think this group, that we've seen them come out, and they've been around for 3 or 4 by-election cycles. It's not new. And they target whoever was running in a by-election right now. This is the next one. So I don't believe it has anything to do with Poilievre. But it certainly raises eyebrows and makes people think. But I don't think that's a legitimate...
Greg?
I want to welcome Pierre Poilievre to the chat a year later. I mean, as Fred said, we were here. There was a point where I think I said, I don't remember a time I wasn't in this room. That night just went on and on. And David Cochrane had that great line about the ballot looking like a chain restaurant menu. I don't think that they've been very successful, as Fred said, getting their point across. The one time I do remember them showing up for an interview here, I don't feel that this person as a spokesperson acquitted themselves very well and won anybody over. Look, when I started off in politics, we still had enumeration. And so in those days, it'd be somebody like a young Tory, a young Liberal, so there was a check and a balance, or if the NDP had come first or second, that was the way. And you got people on the voters list and you updated it. And I know that there's been court decisions and other things that have affected that, but they are not very successful in what they say their goal is.
Yeah, we don't really talk about their actual end goal. It's just the nuisance of it, right? And I mean, when Elections Canada had 92 candidates on the ballot for the Carleton general election race, it was a meter long. So if we're talking like 200 candidates, we're talking like a ginormous ballot. And there are like legitimate concerns about that for people who are visually impaired, older folks manipulating a document that big. Obviously, we've talked about the count. It could go on for hours. It delays releasing some of those results to people in a timely manner. I mean, there's actual practical considerations to this protest too that are problematic, right?
Unless there was an actual sign at the voting box saying, there's so many candidates because we're looking for electoral reform, not a single person who's going to vote with all those folks is going to understand why there's so many people. And I think the goal of electoral reform is to have more people participating in our democracy. And I think, unfortunately, the fact that they've got so many people signing up for these by-elections makes people not want to participate in our electoral process, which is the opposite, I think, of what their stated goal is, which is really, I think, the big shame here is the fact that people are looking at this and they're saying, I don't understand. I don't know who's the candidate that I actually want because there's too many names for accessibility issues. I think it sends the wrong message. I think it discourages people to participate, and it if I was those folks, I would maybe reflect a little bit on what I was doing, because to your point, there are important considerations to make sure that participating is accessible by everyone. I think the other message here, though, the fact that Pierre Poilievre has decided to make this, the thing that he's talking about, I think it's just more, you've got nothing to say, you've kind of lost, you're reminding everybody that you've lost, and you're upset that you've lost, and this is now what you're talking about. So I think, the message for both those folks, both Pierre Poilievre and the group doing this, is maybe needs to be reflected on a little bit more, because if I was him, I don't think that this is the message that I would be taking to voters and to Canadians right now.
Yeah, it's loser chat. It really is.
I've said that before, and I didn't want to say it again, so I'm glad that you've
I'm happy to be the bad guy.
I'm not going to use those words, but I don't know why he brought this up. I don't know why he's trying to go out and talk about this. And even a statement like demanding the government do something, like you are the leader of the second largest party in a minority parliament. You can put forth legislation to fix this.
Sure. Yeah,
it's not actually the government of Canada, it's the Parliament of Canada that needs to fix it.
And you're a year late on the subject.
Because it wasn't just Toronto St. Paul's, it was La Salle et Marde Verdun too, right? They had a number of candidates. Okay, let's do our last topic. Let's turn to the NDP, which has begun the process of choosing its new leader. The party released the rules governing that contest today, including a January 28th deadline for candidates to pay the $100,000 fee and a breakdown of diverse groups that will have to endorse their candidacy. We have to get some signatures from equity-seeking groups. Mel, what do you make of what they've released today? Do you think this is fair? I mean, I'm already seeing a lot of backlash online, frankly, from people about the $100,000 fee. The NDP Socialist Caucus, for what, listening to them, they say it's way too high. What do you think of that?
I think if you want a serious leader, and we want to be a serious party, you need to have a fee to make sure that people who are serious to be the leader of our party pay it. We also are a party that needs to raise funds, and we need to run a leadership race, and those things are important. So you need to be able to show that you have the capacity to fundraise and you have the capacity to organize, because otherwise we're not going to be able to build from the last results of the last election. So I think that that's actually quite important. And I think that there's a lot of things that you can do from now until then to make that more accessible, to talk to people who are able to donate to your campaign, et cetera. As it relates to the other rules, and you talked about the equity seeking for folks signing on to your leadership. Those are things that have always really been at play at the NDP. We do things a little bit differently. When you're nominating a candidate, you have to show that you've tried to encourage people who are not white, straight men to run for the position, because we know that, it maybe takes a little bit more to encourage women to run for the position, so to do that work. So I think that that's appropriate, and it's in line with the values of the NDP. As it relates for the other rules, I think we talked about this before, and we talked a little bit about it backstage, but the third party stuff I think is really interesting. I think they've really been thoughtful about how can we address some of the issues that we've seen with foreign interference. So I think that'll be interesting in how that plays out. But to me, it seems like
Standard fare.
standard fare, but also they've been thoughtful about some of the challenges that we've had and how can we make sure that this leadership and this new leader will address some of that.
Yeah, just on the signatures thing, just for I didn't tell the audience what they're asking for. A minimum of 100 signatures must be from equity-seeking groups, and at least 50% of the total required signatures must be from members who do not identify as a cis man, so a non-trans man. Fred, quick final word to you on this one.
Look, rules are always very complex. Every party has their own, and they're always geared up to deal with whatever they feel that their issues are. The NDP are clearly trying to limit who can run in this race. They obviously have the type of candidate they want to see win, and that's what the members elect the executive to lead the party, to make sure that you have a leader that represents your values and you can't have a takeover. The NDP is very fragile right now, so to actually have tight rules that can ensure that a leader is someone that the party can get behind is not a bad thing.
Literally 15 seconds.
58,000 New Democrats voted for Jack Layton, 65,000 for Mulcair, around the same for Jagmeet. That is the bar that they have to meet. They have to be that exciting to get those many New Democrats back out.
We'll be watching for that. All right, thanks to our Political Pulse panel, Greg McEachran, Fred Delory, and Melanie Richer. Nice to see you guys. I'm JP Tasker.